Rittenberg, welcome back to Championship, better known as Titletown here in T-Town. I hope you're doing well, man.
Hey, Ryan, what's going on, man?
Oh, just celebrating another national title, another Nick Saban, another, and we're counting it down. I mean, be honest with us. Is this the only show that you've made an appearance on that is counting down 220 days away from Alabama and Louisville and 88 days away from the spring practice game? Any other show that you've been on in the last couple of weeks that's counting it down other than Tuscaloosa?
I can't say that that's the case, so you guys have to be very proud of that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And counting down Alabama football, it just, it ends and then it restarts. I want to pick your brain about something that you put up a couple of days ago, but I also want to work back to the championship game. Give me your biggest takeaway. You were there inside the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, and just your walk-home message taken out of that dome on that Monday evening.
Well, yeah, again, I think a lot of us in New Orleans thought that there would be a good chance that Tua could play if the offense struggled. And I do think if Clemson went ahead in that game and they had a chance to before they started turning the ball over, it wouldn't have been this incredible shock of, oh, my God, he's in the game, the national championship, and he's a true freshman, and he hasn't really played significant time. And, no, I mean, again, for him to come in and play like that, it's remarkable. I think we'd all agree this was not Nick Saban's best national championship team. It may have been his least powerful, least dominant national championship team, but they found a way to get it done. And it's just, again, a testament to how they recruit and they develop and how they coach. And, it was amazing to see just the way they were able to rally after looking so listless offensively in the first half. And so, just, again, credit to those players and coaches.
Adam, I want to work our way to the second half and obviously what Tua was able to do. What do you think that sets up for the upcoming spring with Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa?
Well, you could argue that this is going to be a competition no matter what. Maybe it wouldn't have if Jalen had been on fire in the playoffs and led him to a national championship. He would be the clear starter going into the spring. But I always thought that this would be a competition as long as both of them are members of the Alabama football team. And now it's even more the case. I don't think Nick Saban's going to care about the fact that Tua was the last quarterback on the field and that he automatically has to be the starter now because he played so well in the second half and in overtime of the national title game. But it was always going to be a competition, at least in my mind, because they were not a dominant passing team. It was something I wrote about going into the Sugar Bowl is why on this team with so many talented recruits and so many great coaches do you basically have one consistent receiving threat. That's got to change, I think, long term. Alabama was able to get away with it for much of the season, but I do think you're going to have to develop more of a passing game. And so either Jalen Hurts takes that step as a passer, or you bring in Tua, who I think we can all agree has some, a little bit of superior gifts as a passer, at least right now. So I just think it'll be a really good competition. I hope Jalen Hurts, is not discouraged. He doesn't seem like a guy that gets too discouraged, even by not being on the field for the championship. So interested to see how the whole thing plays out. As I wrote in that piece last week, Ryan, there's a lot of high-profile schools that have quarterback competitions beginning this spring, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Georgia, whether it's Clemson, even Oklahoma State. You could even argue Oklahoma, although I think Kyler Murray's going to be the guy there. But a lot of big-time schools, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah, when you look at it, let me ask you, if Jalen does not win this job, do you think he stays in Tuscaloosa? Just your opinion, and we're not going to hold your feet to the fire, but what do you think happens if Tua Tagovailoa takes the way that he did that second half? We'll use some Nick Saban verbiage. Take the bull by the horns, as he always likes to say. What if he takes this job? What happens to Jalen Hurts?
Well, you've got a decision to make. I think he's clearly loyal to Alabama. He's been a great representative of the program. He, says the right things. He acts the right way. He's played really well. He's won a lot of games for them. But if he, sees it as a path where, all he's going to be doing is coming in, at the end of the game or if there's an injury or something like that, and he wants to continue to be a starting quarterback, he certainly will have options to go elsewhere. And he may have options to go to a system where his talents are used in a different way and where he might be a little bit better fit given his skills and his strengths. So, that's a decision every player has to make, but I don't think it's as automatic with Jalen Hurts as it is with other quarterbacks. For example, Ohio State has 3 players competing for the starting job this spring. I have been told by people in that program that there's no way there's going to be 3 players competing for that job going into the season, and that's not a knock against any of them, but someone's going to transfer. And I don't think that it's necessarily that cut and dried with Jalen Hurts in Alabama, even if he does not win or does not retain that starting job.
Adam, as you go through this list, you've hit some of the highlights, but this spring is going to set up dynamic for what you and I do with creating conversations around college football, because it always starts at the quarterback. And if you can create a conversation there, everything else flows. As you highlighted in your article here at ESPN.com, there is a ton of unstability, or maybe even some starters that like Kelly Bryant. We watched what he was able to do at Clemson, but then you guys got like Hunter Johnson that'd be pushing for player time. You go through the list, and there is a lot of quarterbacks battle, which is going to lead to a lot of healthy conversations for you and I.
Yeah, it will. And I think the big thing that's changed is there's so many quarterbacks come in now ready to play, like Tua did, like Jalen Hurts did, to be honest. And you look at Clemson's situation, not only did they have a top quarterback recruit in last year's class in Hunter Johnson, but they bring in Trevor Lawrence now, so who's on campus. And a lot of these quarterbacks are enrolling early, so they're starting their clock even earlier to be in the mix to compete for a starting job. And so that's why it's so interesting. Kelly Bryant was so good for much of the season, did not play well in the Sugar Bowl, but didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to make plays against Alabama. So, does he have to completely re-earn his job, or does he just go out and play well enough this spring and they still look at him as a starter? There's Jake Fromm, who did everything you could ask for of a true freshman and leading Georgia to the cusp of a national championship. But here comes Justin Fields, the top quarterback recruit in the country, trying to take his job. Just like he was able to ultimately take the job because of injury initially with Jacob Eason, but eventually because of his performance. So, Michigan they need a quarterback. They clearly dropped off there. We know about Ohio State. Notre Dame is an example of a guy in Brandon Wimbush who started for much of the season but struggled mightily down the stretch, and so that job is up for grabs to a degree. He's got to re-earn it, because I know the coaches there want to see more out of him, and that's really the case in so many different programs. USC needs a new quarterback after losing Sam Darnold. So it'll be an exciting spring, as you said, and an exciting offseason to talk about.
Let me ask you, when we talk about off-season topics, what do you think is that one conversation around college football? Maybe it's a rule change. Obviously, the 10th coach and what you guys do from a national standpoint of following, the additional coach added to all these staffs is really, really busy now. But when things settle down and we get past National Signing Day, what do you think that off-season college football improvement, maybe it's redshirt, maybe it's 5 years of eligibility, whatever it is, what do you think will drive that off-season conversation around college football?
Well, I think some of the coaches are trying to be more proactive in terms of rule changes. Being at the coaches convention in Charlotte, right around the national title game, they really want this redshirt thing to happen. And it's rare for the coaches to bring a proposal like this. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it certainly will help. To make sure that if a position group is depleted, like Alabama's linebackers, you can think about using a player that was going to be, quote unquote, redshirted later in the season and not lose a full season of eligibility. That seems to make sense. But there's a lot of conversations like that with potential rule changes. The early signing period and the early official visits is very much something coaches have in mind right now. I also think scheduling reform. This is my big pet peeve, Ryan. I could talk about this with you forever.
All right,
I just really, really dislike the dramatic differences in scheduling approach, and then we want to say, oh, this is our real national championship, and this is our real playoff, and everyone's got the same chance to make it. Well, they don't. They just don't. And it's a shame, because I don't think that fans everywhere are served in the same way, and it's just so dramatic how leagues schedule differently. So I hope that generates some discussion, because I know it's something that I like to talk about a lot.
Well, Adam, let me ask you, what do you think is the solution? What do you think we do to try to maybe create them, to make them a part of the conversation?
Yeah, again, I think it's more, at the Power 5 level, having some type of uniformity in scheduling. And that obviously would require the SEC and the ACC at this point to go to 9 conference games, or the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and the Big 12 to go back to 8. So I don't know which one it is. I personally wish that, because I'm out for the fans here, and I want fans to see as many exciting matchups as possible. I would love it to have more conference games, to have either 9 or even 10 conference games at all the Power 5 levels, so you don't have these garbage matchups early in the year or sometimes later in the year in the SEC that are just a waste of everybody's time. I want fans to be able to be in the same league as another team and actually get to see that team every so often. And I love the Big 12 model. I love the fact that they play each other every year. So what that 2 really good teams play in their conference championship game? That's a great thing. We had it this year in the SEC with 2 really good teams that played in the league championship game, but we haven't had that in recent years. We have a really good team in Alabama and a very mediocre team on the other side. So there's a lot of things that I'd love to change, but I ultimately would want to see more attractive matchups both within the conference and outside the conference, because that serves the fans.
Yeah, and let me say this, and maybe you disagree. I don't even know if it's feasible, but what if we allowed spring football to involve some of these, I would call them mid-major, maybe that's not fair, non-Power 5, I guess would be the better correct terminology, but if we allowed them to have spring football, could you imagine what it would do for your networks, what you and I do, and the interest and the publicity they would get? Yeah, you'd probably have to work around the draft and some of those conversations, but could you imagine college football in the spring that really mattered? Unlike, the 15 practices that we'll get in Tuscaloosa that will intrigue all of us, but not really outside of Tuscaloosa.
Well, I don't know exactly how you'd work it. I mean, there's obviously so much focus now on health and safety and to increase competition, more injuries, all of that. We talked about the scholarship numbers just now and the redshirt issue. But obviously, if you could create some sort of scrimmage that's more exciting, maybe preseason or spring, that's one option. But again, I'm more focused on the in-season schedules because, if you're a Pac-12 school, if you're Stanford, and I know David Shaw has brought this up a lot, and you have Notre Dame on the schedule every year, and you have 9 conference games, and you always have USC in the other division, it's going to be really hard for you to ever make the playoffs. And then, again, it worked out for Alabama, but in most years, a schedule like that shouldn't get a team in a playoff. And it did this year. But I think if everything was equal, I think you'd have, just better games and teams that really, really earn their way all the way into the playoff because, the schedule differences wouldn't be as dramatic as they are right now.